You've tuned into Unpause Your Life with Dr. Callie Estes. Your access to success strategies and more to help you move onward and upward with your life. Listen in each week as she interviews others who have really taken their essence to the next level and truly unpaused their life. Now here's your host, Dr. Callie Estes.
Hey everyone, welcome to the show. This is Dr. Callie Estes, and I am founder of the Addictions Academy, the Addictions Coach, and Rehab Rescue. Welcome to Unpause Your Life. This is a great podcast where we showcase people who have done something extraordinary with their life. I welcome you, and I hope you enjoy all of our guests.
On my way, found a reason to wake up another day.
Before we get started, let's hear this short message from one of my supporters.
All the things that you won't do.
Did you know 81% of Americans would like to become a published author? Chances are you might be one of them. What's stopping you? Writing and publishing a book takes a lot of work and is expensive, right? Well, not anymore. For your next book project, or even your first, team up with Hassle-Free Books. They make it so easy to become an author. They remove all of the fuss and struggle and make it smooth and simple. And it's far more affordable than you could ever imagine. Go to hasslefreebooks.com and use promo code UNPAUSE to receive a 10% discount off of any book project. Get started right away and become a published author in as little as 45 days. For your free 1-hour book formula guide, which will show you just how painless it can be to become an author, head to hasslefreebooks.com today.
All right. Thanks again for joining me. Let's get started with today's show.
Took a walk down the dark road where they said that I shouldn't go. I knew the dangers of life.
Thank you for listening to Unpause Your Life with Dr. Callie Estes, the Addictions Coach and the Addictions Academy. My guest today is Brandon Novak. And at the age of 7, Brandon Novak was an aspiring young skateboarder who was discovered by extreme sports icon Tony Hawk. He was destined to be one of the top professional skateboarders in the industry until a dark side of him surfaced. An insatiable lust for heroin. A downward spiral took him from traveling the world and signing autographs for children to living out of fast food restrooms and hustling the streets of Baltimore to sell his body for his next shot of dope. Yet, with the help of best friend and Jackass alum, Bam Margera, he managed to transform his weaknesses into a source of strength and channeled his outrageous behavior into the stunts, skits, and pranks that led him to MTV stardom and counterculture fame. Welcome, Brandon Novak.
How are you?
Good. How are you?
Good. Sure.
So let's start off with this. I got my master's from Westchester, and I spent a lot of time on Gay Street and High Street out there. And
the ongoing joke: you come in high and you leave gay.
Absolutely. I used to live. I don't know if you remember. There used to be a cheese shop at the very, very beginning of Gay when you were coming down on the left-hand side, and then there was a bank on the corner. This is going back 20-some years. I used to live above that cheese shop.
Okay, yeah, that was a bit before my time.
Yeah, they had a coffee store called the Daily Grind next to Iron Hill.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's still there. Iron Hill's still there. Yeah, I spent a lot of my years there. Iron Hill was a bar that I liked to drink at. Ironically enough, at the end, I was kicked out of every bar in town except for the one bar that I didn't like. So the reason why I wasn't kicked out there is because I never went there. And then at the end, I was only allowed to enter those bars if I was going to eat food only. Like they would not serve me alcohol there. And that was kind of my deal. Now, oddly enough, I'm welcome back in all the establishments.
Nice. Very nice. So let me ask you some questions. I'm going to ask you, how did you get involved with Bam and the Jackass crew, and how did that all come about?
Well, Bam and I had met. I'm originally born and raised in Baltimore City. And I was born there, and I skateboarded there my whole life. And a fellow by the name of Bucky Lasik, who was also a professional for Powell-Peralta at the time, took me under his wing, and he kind of mentored me.
Mm-hmm.
And but so him and I would take road trips up to a skate park called Cheapskates in Pennsylvania. And at that time, I was probably around 11, 12 years old. We had met Bam at that skate park, and I was already sponsored by Powell. I was amateur, Bucky was pro, and Bam was not sponsored at that time, but he was really good, and we knew that he was going to be somebody. Long story short, we became like best of friends, and we would go up to his house, and we would stay at his parents' house for the weekend, and we would skate during the day and go back to his house and hang out and do whatever. And that kind of spawned our friendship, and we would go back and forth all the time. And then we would enter these contests once a year, and either Bam would win or I'd win. We were kind of like arch enemies. We would spend all year leading up to this contest practicing. We were both good contest skaters. We were very consistent, and we both liked mini ramp. And like I said, either he'd win or I'd win. And then one year, he had been practicing all year waiting for me to come, and I didn't go to the contest. And he went to Bucky, who was there, and he said, "Bucky, where's Novak?" And Bucky said to Bam, he said, "I think he's on heroin." And Bam was like, "What's that?" You know, he was still at such a young age. He didn't know. And the reality was that I was on heroin. So as Bam continued to progress and excel in the world of skateboarding, I completely declined and disappeared out of the skateboarding world. And at this point in time now, I'm like homeless, living on the streets of Baltimore, doing whatever it took to get a next fix. And one day I stumbled into this skate shop, and I went into the skate shop in hopes to get 10, 20, 30, 40 bucks out of them. That did not happen. But what happened was, oddly enough, Bam happened to be there the day before doing a demo with the skate team that he rode for at the time. And he left his number for me. And he said, "Hey, if you see Novak and he comes in, give him my number and tell him if he ever wants to get his life together and get off heroin and continue to, you know, skateboard and get his skateboarding career back, to call me and I'll help him." So I take the number, and I did what most people thought I wouldn't do. I actually called him. And when I called him, he said, "Hey, I'm willing to help you out and do whatever it takes to get you off heroin and get your life back in order. You can come up to Pennsylvania. You can live at my house. You can skate. You can be," because at the time he had this TV show called Viva La Bam. "You can be on my TV show. You can get paid, and like, I'll do whatever it takes to help you." That was my transition into Pennsylvania.
So let me ask you this. How did you go from you're skating, you're winning these competitions, to bam, you're homeless? What happened?
Yeah, no, it's a valid question, and it makes complete sense. And the reality is prior to heroin, I was a really successful individual at a very young age. At the age of 14, I was the first skateboarder to ever be endorsed by Gatorade. They were flying me out to the Quake Roads. They were flying me out to the Quake Roads building in Chicago, and to where they made Gatorade. And they would put me on one treadmill. They put Michael Jordan on another treadmill. They'd put wires in our tubes and down our throats, and they would give us as we ran on a treadmill, and they would give us each Gatorade to see the effects that it has on different sports players. At the age of 15, I'm designing my first pro shape for Powell-Peralta. I'm traveling the world. I have a tutor that goes with me. And so I'm doing things, and I'm being very successful at them at a young age. So by the time, and I lived a rather extreme lifestyle. I ran with older people. There was no accountability in my life. You know, I didn't have like a boss that I showed up to a job at 5 or 7 days a week. I was on my own at a young age, and I was traveling the world, and I was kind of accountable for myself. So, you know, being the youngest kid, hanging out with older guys that live an extreme life, if you will, they drank, they smoked weed, some of them did cocaine, and I kind of fell into line with that. And before anyone really knew that I had a problem, it had already completely grasped every part of my body. It had me. So it wasn't like people were like, "Hey, Novak's acting different. He's out of line. He's out of character," because I always marched to my own beat, and I was successful at it. So before I knew it, it had me. And then when I realized it had me, I was too far gone for anyone to kind of try to pull me back in, if that makes sense.
Wow. Okay. So here you are. You've got the world by the balls, literally. Mm-hmm. And you get this drug, and the drug totally cripples you. Cripples everything you love, takes you out of the game. So now Bam reaches out and says, dude, come stay with me. Let's get this back on track. So you go. And what happens?
Yeah. Well, the reality is I wanted to change. I wanted to change, but I didn't understand enough about the disease of addiction at that point in time to conquer it. So really what I thought was if I just put it down, I'd be good. But what I know now that I didn't know then is that the same addict will use again. The same alcoholic will drink again. And it's a threefold disease. It's physical, it's mental, it's spiritual, and so I would go with the best intentions, but my disease doesn't work that way. When they say it's cunning, baffling, and powerful, like that's an understatement for my disease, because I suffer from check it out. The factual evidence dictates, and you can't deny or debate this. If you're diagnosed as an addict or an alcoholic, that's a fatal disease. And that fatal disease left untreated equals death. Right. But it's the only fatal disease that I'm aware of that tells me that I don't have a disease. So if you diagnose me with HIV, I'm rushing to the hospital to get medication because I don't want to die. Fatal disease. If you diagnose me with cancer, I'm rushing to the hospital to get chemo because I don't want to die. Fatal disease. If you diagnose me as an addict or an alcoholic, I need a glass of wine or a bag of heroin to figure out what the fuck's wrong with you for diagnosing me with such disease. And it's just as fatal as the first two diseases. But left to my own devices, when I think that I can do it on my own, I'll believe that I don't have a disease, and I'll hang up from this podcast with you, and I'll go buy a bag of heroin. That's how powerful my disease is. But I didn't know that then.
Right.
So I was, and he definitely didn't understand the disease of addiction either. So he was doing what he knew best to do, which was try to help his best friend. And I was really giving it my all. But it doesn't work that way for me. I couldn't physically just put it down. So I would go up there. I would start skating. I would start making some money. I would get some opportunities. And then as soon as I would get the money or the opportunities, I would fully take advantage of the opportunities or take the money and run back to Baltimore and buy more heroin. So it was like a wash, rinse, repeat kind of thing for the better part of like 7 or 8 years.
So at what point did you say to yourself, I can't do this anymore? This is crazy.
Well, when that happened to me, a half hour or 40 minutes for us to do this and me tell my story, like wouldn't even scratch the surface. But to try to put it in like the crystal meth form of a Reader's Digest version, basically what happened at the end of my run, because what I always tried to do my whole life is I thought that social acceptability equaled personal recovery, right? So if the woman was pretty enough, the bank account was high enough, the house was big enough, and the car was new enough, and you told me those things and validated what I had, I thought that I was doing better. But really what I was trying to do is I was trying to fill this internal void with the external solution. So the skateboarding world became a wash. I couldn't do that anymore. Then I tripped and I fell into these Jackass movies, right? And in these Jackass movies, now I'm like traveling the world. I'm doing things that people equate to success or happiness and that some even dream of doing. But I keep going to these meetings. And in these meetings, they tell me my life is unmanageable. And I believe my life is unmanageable. But then I go do an appearance at a nightclub and they'd say, what would you like in your green room? And I'd say, some cocaine, some Xanax, some wine, and possibly some heroin, depending upon the venue, if they look like they would supply that. And they would get me those substances. And then I would take pictures. I would sign autographs. And then at the end of the night, I would get a check for $10,000. So now, like, I'm really delusional because it's my job to get high, basically, you know, and you tell me my life is unmanageable and I believe it's unmanageable, but my bank account begs to differ. So I don't know what I'm willing to do. So my delusional alcoholic mind says the Jackass world needs me. It cannot go on without me. I am an asset. In reality, it did not need me. It went on quite fine without me, and I was a liability. But unfortunately, I'm the last person to see that because I suffer from this job, and this job consists of knowing everything. I know everything, and therefore I'm not willing to hear what you have to tell me. And I'm the kind of alcoholic, if you tell me what I need to do, I tell you why you need to fuck off. Because once again, I know everything. So now that the Jackass world, just like that skateboarding world, they're not booking flights. Flights aren't being booked. Tours aren't being scheduled. Paychecks are being diverted to my ex-fiance because they say if we book him the flight, will he make the flight? If he makes the flight, what condition will he be in when he gets here? And let's say we book him the flight and he makes the flight. Is the same thing that's going to happen as last time where we have to kick the bathroom door down in Paramount Studios and find him dead on the ground with a needle in his arm. So now that's a wash. And I'm trying to figure out how I can get better without going to rehab, because like that clearly does not work for me. I've been successful to this point. So I come up with a foolproof plan of how I'm going to beat my addiction to alcoholism. I'm going to move to Helsinki, Finland, right?
Okay.
I'm going to move to Helsinki, Finland, and this is going to work. And mind you, how my disease is cunning, baffling, and powerful. It makes me believe the unbelievable. How could this not work? I will bet my mother on it. I love my mother more than anything in the world. I will bet her on this deal that I'm about to make, because I don't want to drink or drug anymore. I'm literally going to go move across the world. They don't even speak my language there. I can go there. I can regroup. I can rebrand. I can reassess. I can reevaluate. I can fucking redo life, and I'm going to do it. So I jump on a plane and I go to Helsinki, Finland. And at a young age, my mother told me, show me who you walk with and I'll tell you who you are. So that whole social acceptability equals personal recovery, the internal void with the external solution. I get off the plane and I go right to this 5-star hotel, and I go to the lobby bar, and there's all these businessmen in these expensive business suits having meetings. And I go right to the bar and I order bottle after bottle of wine, and I meet this guy, and he hooks me up with another guy who's now delivering me bags and bags of heroin, and I'm going to the bathroom, I'm shooting up. And I call my sponsor and I said, Lex, how the fuck did this happen? I was not supposed to do this in Finland. You could have strapped me up to a polygraph. I would have passed with flying colors. This was not going to happen. And he said, well, allow me to share with you, Mr. Know-It-All, that geographical change does not equal recovery. And he said, let me take it a step further for you, Mr. Genius. You can't shake your shadow. You take you with you everywhere you go. And I said, all right, that makes sense. And he said, let me take it another step further for you. The drugs and the alcohol are not your problem. And that to me was like a punch in the gut. It was like you just shot me in the head with a shotgun. What do you mean it's not my fucking problem? I've literally just moved across the world to escape heroin and wine. And he said, it's not your problem. It's your solution. You know, they talk about your triggers. Your triggers are when your eyelids open. So like, I can justify why anything makes a reason to shoot heroin or drink wine. You put me in Finland, I shoot heroin. You put me in Africa, I shoot heroin. It rains, I shoot heroin. It snows, I shoot heroin. It's sunny, I shoot heroin. He said, your problem is your thinking, your attitude, and your behavior. So I get on a plane and I come back, and now I got to come up with another plan of how I'm going to reinvigorate my life. And I decided I'm going to write a book right now. Now, up to this point, I did things, you know, I was a professional skateboarder, first skateboarder to be endorsed by Gatorade. I've been in movies that break box office records. In theory and on paper, a very successful individual. I did things in life that people equate to success or happiness, and that some even dream of doing. Now I'm going to write this book because I have to redo my social status. Now, up to this point, I have no GED. I was not kindly asked to leave high school because I got caught with drugs and alcohol. As a matter of fact, after the book came out, I got my GED, but I got my GED when I was in prison. And the reason why I got my GED when I was in prison was A, because I had the time, and B, if you passed the GED in prison, you got a pizza party that was supplied by Domino's. So that was kind of a no-brainer, you know. And go figure. Here's the thing. I aced the GED. And the reason why I aced it is because it was my idea. The reason why I did so horrible for so many years in treatment centers and psychiatrist's office and doctor's office and AA and NA meetings, the reason why I did so fucking bad is because it wasn't my idea. If it was my idea, I would have excelled at a rapid pace and been a billboard for a treatment center or a psychiatrist's office. But once again, I have that job that requires knowing everything. So you tell me what I need to do. I tell you I need to fuck off. So I decided I'm going to take the GED. I passed it. I aced the thing. But prior to that, I've written this book. Now the book gets published. So now I'm a published author with no GED. And I write, and then the book is an autobiography addiction memoir. So now I'm a published author who's written a book on addiction. And to take it a step further, it becomes a New York Times seller. Now I'm receiving hundreds of thousands of pieces of mail from all over the world of people like you saying, Novak, I read your story. I didn't want mine to get as bad as yours. I have 30 days. People like you saying, Novak, I read your story. I understand why my daughter picked the needle over coming to have dinner with me on the weekends. It's not because I was a bad mother. It's because she suffers with the disease of addiction. My delusional alcoholic mind said I just wrote the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous or the basic text of Narcotics Anonymous. And I believed it, you know, I believed it. But yet at the same token, I can't keep a needle out of my arm or a straw out of my nose or a bottle out of my mouth. So what happened at the end of all that A whole bunch of things happened. Like I said, there's just nearly not enough time to tell you everything. The drugs and the alcohol stopped working. And they had told me a long time ago, it's really hard to shoot a bag of heroin when it's cut with NA. It's really hard to drink a glass of wine when it's cut with AA. Because I'm the same guy who's been in 13 inpatient treatment centers. I've lost count of outpatients and detoxes. My mother had bought me a plot. People had taken life insurance policies out on me. I had been on life support for 7 days. So I knew there was a way up and out of my position, provided I got the fuck out of my own way. Because my very best thinking got me to this point. But what happened was the drugs and the alcohol stopped working. Because prior to them not working, it was fine. I could be homeless. I could be selling my body on the corner for $40 to anybody that would buy. And it was okay. It was okay because as soon as I put a bag of heroin in my arm, it would allow me to escape the reality for which I had created for myself, right? So it's okay. But now it's not working, meaning that, like, no matter how much heroin I put in my arm, no matter how much wine I shove down my throat, it no longer allows me to escape the reality for which I had created for myself. Meaning that, like, I'm not okay with selling my body. I'm not okay with sleeping in abandoned houses. I'm not okay with being a 35-year-old man who, in theory and in paper, prior to this day, was a very successful individual. I was a millionaire 3 times over at the age of 24. Now at 35, my worldly possessions consist of 8 scarves, 2 jackets, 3 socks, and 1 stick of deodorant that fits into a bag that doubles as a pillow. And there's no amount of heroin that I can shove into my arm that allows me to escape the reality that I created for myself. It is no longer okay, and it is no longer working. But the hit is that I'm horrible at fucking suicide because I keep waking up, and I'm at a point where I'm so low the curb looks like a skyscraper, and I'm the kind of alcoholic that I want to kill myself on a daily basis. But the hit is that I don't want to hurt myself in the process. So what happened was I walked into my 13th inpatient treatment center, and what I realized on that day was such a freeing experience. I've never felt anything like this. I went from having that job for 24 years of knowing everything, and that job was very tiresome, and it put me in a lot of positions that I did not like to be in, to walking into my 13th inpatient treatment center at 35, my clothes on my back, and my worldly possessions in my bag, and what I realized is that I know that I don't fucking know. And my very best thinking has got me in that position. And what happened was I was demoralized in just such a fashion from drugs and alcohol. I was beaten into that state of reasonableness where finally my back was against the wall. And I said, you know what? I know that I don't know. So I had been to this treatment center 4 times previous. And the last 4 times going to this treatment center, it would go like this. I would sit down in the intake chair with the intake woman, and she'd say, okay, Mr. Novak, your insurance covers you for 90 days. And I would look at this same woman and I would say, in theory, 90 days sounds great, but in reality, I'm more of like a 45-day kind of fella because I have this woman to see, this job to fulfill, or this state to go to. And the woman would gently laugh at me each and every time, and she'd say, sweetheart, you have no idea. Anything or everything that you put in front of your recovery does not or will not matter because you will lose it. And ignorance is bliss, but when you know, you fucking know. And I remember her telling me that the last 4 previous attempts of me going to this treatment center. And this last time, I was beaten so bad by drugs and alcohol that when she presented to me that opportunity, I could not come back with a retort because if I said no, that entailed an explanation. And I literally was beaten so bad that all I could do was just shake my head yes. And she said, you know, all right, maybe you have a shot. And that was kind of my my transition into my life of sobriety today.
Wow, that's powerful because you had everything and just kept losing everything, and your mind kept telling you it's okay, you got this.
Yeah, because like I said, I was very successful up to that point. You know, even while getting high and drinking, I was still able to fucking publish a book with no GED that became a New York Times seller, and the book was on addiction. You know, I was able to end up in movies that break box office records while on addiction. Like I said, I thought the social acceptability equaled personal recovery. But I just didn't understand the disease of addiction enough yet to really, I had to be more, you know, at the end of my run, after my mother had exhausted all opportunities, options, and resources, she had sold 4 homes to personally pay for me to go to treatment because I didn't have insurance. She had depleted several savings accounts. She went to God with one prayer, and she's really big in the church. And she went to the church across the street from her house in Little Italy in Baltimore. And Father Mike said, Miss Pat, how's Brandon? And Miss Pat said, my mother, she said, Father Mike, he's never been worse. I've literally sold 4 homes. I've depleted several savings accounts. There's nothing I can do to help him. So I simply went to God with one prayer. And Father Mike said, oh yeah, Miss Pat, what's that prayer? And Miss Pat said, Father Mike, it's simple. The prayer consists of this: God, please cure him, kill him, or kill me, because I can't take it anymore. So now I have the woman that I love more than anything in the world basically praying for my death at the end. You can watch interviews of her on the internet, and I didn't know these existed until about a year ago. She was talking to someone that was interviewing her about me, and she said, I used to pray not to get that phone call. I used to pray not to get that phone call, to at the end praying to get that phone call, just to give her a peace of mind. And it's like, what am I, how did I get here? I had goals. I had dreams. I had ambitions. I lived with a fucking cautionary tale. My father died as a direct result of the disease of addiction. Now, mind you, I come from better. I know better. My mother's a nuclear physicist on the board of Mercy Hospital. 53 years of gainful employment, second longest employer in Mercy Hospital history. My brother's an attorney in the White House. He does pensions and benefits. I lived with the cautionary tale. My father, I swore I would never become him. I excelled in anything that I did to not be a drug addict, alcoholic, because I saw the harm that it caused and created to my family, to my mother, to me, to my brother, to my sister. And yet, at the end, I became that man,
Mm-hmm. Now, I'm going to ask you a very esoteric question. Do you think this is your life purpose, and all the other stuff, the skateboarding and the TV and all of that, was the lead up to do this? Because you're a powerful speaker.
I really believe it is. And I don't want to sound egocentrical when I say that. But like I said, so I have this documentary coming out, right? And the documentary, they followed me around for 7 years. And they got like the highs of highs. And when I say the lows of lows, literally the lows of lows, me on the corner prostituting my body. They got it all. And right before I went to that last treatment center, I didn't find out until after I was finished that treatment center that they had a secret meeting, obviously, that I wasn't invited to, with the production company, figuring out how they were going to end this movie and my death. Everyone was waiting on me to die. I was literally living in borrowed time. No one was betting on me to get sober. No one was betting on me to stay sober, including myself. But oddly enough, I defied odds and logic, because statistical evidence states, factual evidence dictates that I am to be high or dead right now. Right. And the fact that I'm not, it's miraculous equaling miracle, and it defies logic. So I really believe what I do now, 99% of the people that call me, right? They call me, they say, Novak, if you can get clean, there's no reason why I can't. Can you help me? Because there's some substance in my story. It's tangible. You can look at it on the internet. You can look me up. You can read my books. You can watch me in movies. You can look up the tabloids. You saw the death and destruction that I lived due to heroin, alcohol, drugs, etc. But now in all those same outlets, you can look me up and see this rebirth of me. Mm-hmm. So like I said, it's tangible there. And that's a little bit different than a 50-year-old professor reading out of a textbook, giving a bunch of theories or hypotheses of what may or may not happen. And I have a way to get through to people, because I'm the real deal guy that was deemed unhelpable or unfixable, who was supposed to die with a needle in his arm. So I really believe that I went through what I went through to have the God-given ability to do what I do now. I joke with my therapist, I told you I got my GED in prison, but it's kind of like I have my PhD in the life of drugs and alcohol. I'm very good at what I do, and I have a way to getting through to most that other people don't. Because a lot of addicts and alcoholics, their walls are up. They're very guarded when it comes to getting help. But the people that I talk to, when families put me in touch with their sons or daughters, I have a way of getting through that wall that they built to where they become open and receptive to what I have to say. Because they know who I am, so I use who I was prior to sobriety to help whoever I can now in sobriety. Kind of goes back to the question that you asked, mm-hmm. The things that I've done in my life to lead up to now. And the reality is this language of the heart. I know it all too well. There's really the only thing I haven't done, seen, or tried is homicide when it comes to drugs and alcohol. you know? So I believe that this was kind of my calling in a strange way.
That's very powerful.
And, you know, oddly enough, my best friend, Bam Margera, the guy who I credit for getting me out of Baltimore, and when I just couldn't stay clean, his own mother, his own parents, Phil and April, they would go to him and they'd say, Bam, leave Novak alone. He's nothing but a junkie. He's never going to be anything but a junkie. He's going to continue to hurt from you. He's going to continue to hurt you. He's going to continue to steal from you, rob from you, and lie to you. And I kept doing that. They said, leave him alone. He never left me alone. As odd would have it, and as fate would have it, he now is kind of caught up in a similar situation where he struggles with alcoholism, and his parents have called me to go to his house on a couple occasions to do an intervention on him. His parents have called me when I had to put his nephew into treatment. You know what I mean? So,
right.
Like, it's just very strange how fate would have it with certain things. I always say when I want to make my God laugh, I tell him how my day is going to
go. It's interesting being in this industry. I've been in this industry 21 years. So I've seen it, done it, heard it all.
Sure.
And your story is very, very powerful because you were set for success. You had everything laid out literally to be extremely successful, and you fucked it all up. And not because you chose to, because your brain, your addicted brain said, this is what I would rather you do. And you can do this too. Your brain convinced you you could have both.
Yeah, and that's kind of what I was saying before. I have that disease that tells me I don't have a disease. And when I'm caught up in the grip of it, I love my mother more than anything in this world, but God forbid, and you'll hear, if you ever heard my full story, the reality is that anything between me and that next bag, bottle, or pill must and will go. And it's not personal, it's just business. I don't want to fucking hurt you. I want to steal from you. I don't want to rob you. I don't want to lie to you, but I can't not do it. So excuse me, but it's just business. You know, my disease, that's just my disease works. And when I pick one of anything up, I don't have the privilege to have choices and options of what I will or will not do for that next one, or when I will or will not pick it up. When my disease calls, I fucking answer, because I don't have the privilege to say, no, not right now, disease. I'm busy. My disease doesn't recognize that shit.
Right. So now our listeners are going to ask, what are you doing to keep yourself sober? What are the things you've plugged into that, you know,
well,
why do you, go ahead.
You know, they told me in the beginning this time, they said, look, kid, this thing is called alcoholism, not alcoholism. And it has a shelf life of 24 hours, and you can't stay sober on yesterday's sobriety. So I do a few simple things along the way each day to maintain my sobriety. And everything that I'm telling you, people have taught me. It's not like I'm some fucking genius here. I was just open, willing, receptive to a new way of life. And they told me, stick to the basics. So God willing, you never have to go back to the basics. The reality is that, like, I don't take credit for this. I didn't pick to be on this radio show today with you. I didn't pick what rehab I went to. I didn't pick my sobriety date. I'm not religious. I'm very spiritual, and I don't take control of this, because when I think I got this, what happens is I take credit for it, and then I forget where I came from, and I always return. So I wake up each day. I don't drink or drug despite any and all adverse consequences. I've experienced the steps. I have a sponsor. I have 5 sponsees, and I stay very active in the program, you know, and I don't complicate it. I don't complicate this. I'm a big fan of why fix it if it's not broke.
Right.
Because I've went into treatment centers for half of my life. And I would outthink my way out of the rooms, out of the treatment centers, because I knew everything. And kind of unfortunately, or maybe fortunately for me, depending upon one's perception, is I was kind of right. I did know some shit because I was successful. But like I said, I was demoralized in just such a fashion, this time from drugs and alcohol to for lack of better words, I always like to say that I dumbed my way into it this time, you know?
Right. I always say success is never owned. It's only rented. And the rent is due every day. So that means you've got to get up, suit up, and show up every single day. So if you went to a meeting yesterday, you got to do it again today. And you got to put your best foot forward, and you got to put 100% in today, because yesterday doesn't count for today.
Absolutely. That's what my therapist told me in treatment. She said, Novak, boys do what they want to do. Men do what they have to do. It's time for you to suit up and show up and put one foot in front of the other. And that's kind of what I do. You know, and I'm not religious, but I'm very spiritual. I believe that, like, a power greater than myself lifted this obsession to use. I had tried everything humanly possible to rid my desire, lift my obsession, so on and so forth. And I'm not strong enough to do that. I'm not strong enough to get me sober or keep me sober. A power greater than myself did that. So I'm like a spiritual giant right now. And I'm like, that's spirituality is like the whole thing. It's the name of the game for me.
It's so interesting you said that, because I was talking to Peter DiStefano from Porno for Pyros, and I was asking him, what did he do? Because he was similar to you, whereas anything goes. He was all balls out with his addiction. And he said, he goes, one day I was standing in the street and I just felt like God came down and shifted something. And I realized I can't do this. I had to get out of my own way, and that something greater than me could do this for me. That I was not the end all be all. He goes, and that day when I realized I'm not God, I don't have all the answers, I'm not the shit, that's when I realized I could do this, because I got out of my own way. And I tell my clients that you got to get out of your own way, because they're always standing there going, I don't understand what's going on, because they're in their own way. And they're never just going, you know what, I'm going to just take a chill, step back, and let something greater than me come in and work some magic. They never seem to be able to get there.
I always say, man, thank God God's God and I'm not God, because I'd put this whole fucking thing into a needle, a bag, or a pill. You know what I mean? I would surely fuck this up. There's no question about that. That's just kind of what and I realized for me is that, like, my very best thinking got me in that position. The best that I came up with had me walk into that 13th treatment center with 4 cigarette butts in my pocket that I dug out of a receptacle. And what I know now that I didn't know then is that my mentality would create the reality for which I lived it. Right. So everything was very dark and bland. And then when I got to treatment, they said, change your perception, change your world. And that was like a lifesaver for me. And that made sense, because I looked at how I looked at life, and I'm like, no wonder my life's like this, because I don't believe or feel that I deserve better or know better. And I kind of settle for anything. And that was sadly a mistake. But now what I know is that, like, sobriety has given me everything that drugs and alcohol ever promised me. I've never been happier in my life.
And that's key. That is the key. Sobriety gave you everything drugs and alcohol promised you, but never delivered.
Fucking right, man. Because I'd have all these grand illusions of plans or businesses I'm going to start or how I'm going to take over the world. But as soon as the bottle was empty, the needle was empty, the bag was empty, reality set back in for what it actually really was. And then I was like on Beach Street, and then I had to buy another bag, another bottle to kind of rejuvenate and bring myself up to these false illusions that life is going to be grand, when in reality that was never going to be the case. I always lived in a self-induced 4-block radius of a prison that cost me $10 to get out of on a daily basis.
Yeah, and you couldn't leave, because if you left, you'd go through detox, and you'd have to go right back.
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, like I told you, when that thing calls, I answer by any and all means. And it's not personal, it's business. When it says jump, I say how high, and that just kind of dictates my life. But the reality is I always say it, knowing what I know now is addiction is not a death sentence. Your history does not have to dictate your future. And as long as you're breathing, it's never too late.
That's awesome.
So I'm a major fan of, like, 10th, 15th, 13th, 5th chances. I'm a major fan of them, because people, I put my number out there and I tell people if they want help to call me, and I give my real number out. People are like, are you crazy? Why would you do that? And it's real simple why I do that, because the day that I chose to call for my 13th attempt at an inpatient treatment center, after my mother was praying for my death, she bought me a plot. People had took life insurance policies out on me, and I was on life support for 7 days. No one was betting on me to get sober, but when I did call, someone answered my phone call. And they did for me what I'm trying to do for other people. And now that's the reason that I'm able to call in today at 3:00 to do this podcast with you, with coming up on 3 years of continuous sobriety. And I have not had the desire to drink or drug one time in this 3 years.
That's amazing. Congratulations on 3 years. That's great.
Oh man, it's beautiful. It's such a beautiful way of life, man. It really is. And what's funny is that drugs and alcohol were my solution to everything for 24 years, right? That was my solution to everything. But then my solution became my problem to everything. So my solution, which became my problem, oddly enough, has now become my solution to everything yet again.
Very awesome. So how do our listeners find you? How do they reach you? How do they find your book, your movie, all those good things?
Well, if anybody's struggling with the disease of addiction, and you're looking for help, you're looking for a way up and out of your position, you can personally call me. And that phone number is 610-635-9092. If you want to look at me on social media and what I'm doing, I'm on Instagram. It's Brandon _Novak. And I believe my Facebooks and my Twitters are probably the same thing. Yeah.
Okay. Awesome. We're going to put all that up for the listeners so they can reach you for help if they want some advice, where to go, if they want to buy your book.
Yeah.
I'm sure it's on Amazon. And
yeah, you can go to Amazon, you can go to Barnes and Nobles, you can
perfect.
Go to wherever you go.
Awesome. So we'll put all that up for everybody to reach you. And is there anything you want to leave the listeners with? Any takeaways?
Yeah, I'd like to leave it with this story, man. There's a father that works from home. And he's swamped in paperwork, and his son keeps banging his dad on the knee. Dad, take me out the plate, take me out the plate, take me out the plate. The father's trying to think of a way to buy 1 or 2 days to finish his paperwork. And he looks on his office and his desk at home, and he sees a big picture of the puzzle of a world map. The father thinks to himself, I got it. He completely dismantles the picture of the puzzle of the world map, and he throws it on the floor. And he said, son, when you put the picture of the puzzle of the world map back together, I'll take you out to play. The father leaves the room thinking he bought 1 or 2 days for sure. 20 minutes later, the son comes back and he bangs his dad on the knee. And he said, Dad, I did it. The father's thinking to himself, impossible. He walks back into the office as sure as the day is long. The picture of the puzzle, the world map's put back together. The father looks at his son. He said, son, how'd you do it? The son said, Dad, it was simple. On the back of the picture of the puzzle was a picture of a man. I put the man back together. The world fell back in place.
Wow.
And it's just,
that's really cool.
It's kind of, it's that simple, man. For me, sobriety was an internal job. And until I was willing to do the work that was entailed to not only get sober, but stay sober, that was the only way I had a shot. And if you want what I have, do what I do, and you can get what I got. They're not selling secret pills in the bathroom to the cool kids. This knowledge is open and free for the taking, man.
That's awesome.
But my sponsor always say to me, Novak, why would you go to the last person you shot heroin with and ask that person for advice on how to better your life? And I'm like, wow, I'm the last person I shot heroin with. So I go to myself and say, what should I do to better my life? It doesn't make sense. So like you said earlier, I just had to get out of my own way and realize that the only thing blocking me from getting better was me.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for coming on today. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak out. I really appreciate that.
Awesome. And this is Dr. Callie Estes with Unpause Your Life with Brandon Novak. Hey, everyone. Thanks again for listening. I really hope you enjoyed the show today. Head on over to iTunes and Apple Podcasts and leave a comment or review of what you think. Or contact us at 1-800-706-0318. If you want to be on our show, feel free to email or call. And if you have a topic, feel free to email or call as well.
Thanks for listening to Unpause Your Life. For show notes and more, head on over to unpauseyourlife.com.
Big shout out to recoveryinnovators.com for help producing this show. Thank you, guys.
I took a walk down the long road where they said that I shouldn't go. On my way found a reason to wake up another day. But they needed to show you all the things that you won't do. Find faith or religion, but nothing to show for it. No need to escape in love with my pain. I'm walk down the dark road where they said that I shouldn't go. I knew the dangers of flying. Now I'm so far from silent ground. But they needed to show you all the things that you won't do. Find faith or religion, but nothing to show